Hi guys. So I'm back again doing the live discussion on the near-death experience. And for those of you that have not really followed the past one that I did, I know you probably have seen a lot of my posts regarding it. In my work as a medium and all of this time period and experience of doing readings and galleries and a lot of my paranormal work that I do, I seem to come across people who have had near-death experiences. And a few years back, I had the pleasure of working on the possibility of a pilot with a good friend now, Neal Marshall, which I'll bring on in just a moment. And I came up with this idea of doing these live discussions. Actually, some of them will be live and some of them will be pre-recorded, but it's a way for me to share with you the powerful realization that many of us do go to the other side naturally and have a profound experience and return. So all of these people have a story to tell, and I thought this would be a wonderful opportunity to create an environment where I can bring on guests who've had near-death experiences, who have survived, what they've learned, what they have to share to the world on that experience. And I kind of tease with Robert, who I'm going to be bringing on, that my work as a medium and my paranormal work of helping spirits that are still lingering around and still have a lot of things to resolve before they decide to cross over, you know, almost like shedding their physical life. I tend to be in a place of getting a glimpse of that door, bringing people in spirit to that door, to really not be afraid of it and to go on. But I personally, I can't go through the door. So what's neat is having the opportunity to discuss and talk with people who have gone through that door, and their vision and their insight is on a whole different level. So for the next hour, I'm going to be discussing all of these things and really just let the discussion go as it may be. And I want to welcome you to my good friend, Neal Marshall.
Hey, Karen, how are you? What a beautiful introduction. Good to see you. Thank you for having me on your show. This is really exciting. So happy.
Yeah, man, it's been, let's see. I was trying to remember exactly when I met you.
Oh, a number of years ago now.
Several years ago.
Yeah. Because there was talk, like you said in your intro, there was talk about a pilot we were trying to pull together, and we shot some initial video. We did some really cool stuff that you have and I still have about like recreating, you know, I remember the ambulance stuff. That was really freaky for me to redo that because it was so close to reality that we did for me, even though it was reenacted. But yeah, that and there were lots of things happening. We went in different directions, but it's not over yet, is it? Right?
I know. Nope, it's not over yet. We're still kind of working on it. There's always that timing. There's timing of things, and you know, we'll definitely pull something together at some point. When it's meant to happen, it will happen.
Exactly.
So why don't you introduce yourself in the, like, all of the hats that you wear? Because you are an incredibly talented person, and I watch you and all these things that you do, and I'm like, okay, I have a hard time doing all the stuff that I do. How the heck do you do all this stuff?
Multitasking. I don't know. You know, it comes from, I think, a love, a passion for what I do, and just to have fun. One of my big lessons about, you know, being gone and coming back, but I think it's been part of me all along, is embracing that love and doing things that are important to you and to those that you love and those around you, and maybe to give back to the world a little bit. And you know, I've had a very varied career. I think that, you know, the world takes you in certain directions. We have ambition, we have dreams, we have goals, and there's reality that's tied in with that. And beyond reality, I think cosmically, it comes into a life mission. What are we supposed to do with that? And sometimes what we think we're supposed to do, I don't think is necessarily exactly what's right. So where I've been in a position to share and to teach and to inspire as a filmmaker, I've been an actor. I still, do work like that. I'm now the managing director of the Columbia Festival of the Arts, which is a beautiful large arts festival in its 34th year here in Columbia, Maryland, where I live. And we had to go virtual to survive because of the pandemic. So last year, I was just then the producer of the Columbia Film Festival. I brought a film festival from live events to virtual because it's all we could do. And our previous director retired, and they made me the managing director of the entire festival. And it's sort of like, hey, here's a large arts festival that had 20,000 people outdoors. Now go make it work. I'm like, you like a challenge, So, but we did it. And I work with a fellow named Dave Simmons, who's my partner in crime, who is a very, very talented young man. He's our programming director now. And Dave is really, he's an expert at all the live bands and the live music and all of that. So he's been shifting to how to complement and work in this virtual world. But we're coming back strong in 2022 with our live festival. But this year we still have our film festival coming up, that's going to be virtual online in June 21st through 25th. So that's what I've been working on. And, but in between,
I can't imagine doing something like that virtual. I mean, I know we've all had to shift and change, and I've never ever thought of live streaming events virtually. So that's a whole new experience for me. But
well, we're kind of trying to here, even with this show, and but this is pre-recorded. I will confess. So but we're doing it live. I mean, we're not editing this. So what you guys see is what's happening. You're just not right there at this moment. But it's taking new platforms, new programs, really, that can host video, like a film festival that makes it secure for the filmmakers.
Right.
So that their content is secure. No one can just steal it.
But
at the same time. But also making it safe and easy rather for the people to come watch it. You just go on your television now. You can hook it up with Roku. It's crazy what you can do now as an organization, and a lot of arts festivals are doing the same thing. So it's been quite a challenge. But that's part of the, you asked me about my background. It's working in the arts and theater. I worked in the West End of London for many years. My boss died very suddenly at 58. I probably had something very similar to what happened to me, only he didn't make it through. Came back to the United States and started working in the arts, and ended up moving to Los Angeles for many years, and got out of the business after the Rodney King riots, came back to Maryland and started working in the arts again. And it's kind of been, I did casting for Pat Moran, who's a famous, she did Hairspray and The Wire, all of that. So I'm very lucky, very interested. My life hasn't been dull, I will say that.
Definitely has not been dull.
No. And then, of course, having a major heart attack in 2013 was a surprise. But it took me to places I didn't know I was going to go.
Yeah, definitely. Well, one of the things that you were talking about made me think of, and it was a question that I actually have, and I thought, well, this is a perfect time to ask it. How, and even before we get into your actual experience,
sure,
I get asked this a lot of like, why? I mean, I know that we're talking about two different worlds in what I do and what you do,
right?
But people have often asked me, why do spirits, like, how come every spirit doesn't just move on? How come every spirit is kind of lingering in their life, their earthbound life?
Mm-hmm.
And it makes me think of even just the question of how come everybody doesn't have a near-death experience? Some people just pass very naturally and go, and other people have this
preview.
Preview, basically. And it makes me think, is there some purpose? Like, if you looked at your life prior to that date, or that particular time, is Robert different? I mean, like, did you have a crash course? Like, if you look through your whole past life from the moment you were born, did you have windows and previews to this? And And how has it been now? Like, are you a different person from that moment? Or is it more like that was a part of your life cycle and it just amplified things for you?
That's
You know
very
what I mean?
interesting. Yeah, no, very interesting. I'd say it's a little bit of both, to be honest with you. I would say the concept of preview or souls in sort of in limbo, I will say without going into the experience until, I'll get to that later, but you don't realize what's happened. I mean, it's so instantaneous. It was so like I've often said it's like someone had a remote control on your TV and you just changed the channel. 1 second you're here, the next second you're there, and you don't really. I didn't question what was happening. I was living it. I was experiencing it. It was a new reality, and it just was. So I think we've talked about this. I can see how a soul or a spirit might be in limbo, not knowing they're dead. I mean, really, because it was just so dreamlike, but more real than reality in a way. So that answering that one question about, limbo, and I think there's more to it than that, but I can see people not knowing if there's not someone to meet them, a guides or angels or relatives, what have you, from what people have talked about. And it's also surreal. I mean, it is to this moment, and it was 8 years ago that happened to me. And it's funny because I met people who it had happened to many years before, and I was so new and so many questions. And now that it's been 8 years, I can't believe it's been 8 years already. But you talk about like a lifetime path. I've always been sort of connected to a belief in a spiritual world, that we came from something more than what we see and what we are. And there were instances where I would have a clairvoyance of some sort, or I just feel there was more. I would do writing, and I would write about other places and other times that were so real to me and that I wanted to know, and was it a past life? And then I went to see a fellow named Elwood Babbitt, who's actually from up in your neck of the woods, who was a famous medium. And it was tied in with the Renaissance community. And when you and I, we did a talk up there in Turner's Falls, which was crazy full circle to have. So it's things like that make me go like,
what are you doing here back in Turner Falls?
Back in Turner's Falls, which is a beautiful place, but it was so powerful in my life because it's like, if you talk about, is there a path? Seemingly accidental things, coincidences, as people like to say. I don't believe there is any such thing, that everything that we do, every nuance, every place that we go, I think somehow is tied in this intricate cosmic web of why we meet people and when we meet people or where we go, or even if you accidentally sit down and start talking to somebody at a bus stop, that could change your life. That one conversation. So was that person placed there? Did you do something that then encouraged somebody else that way? So, I did some automatic writing. What I learned to be automatic writing for me, I had a vivid imagination. I would sit down and I would write something. I had an old Olympia typewriter back then. We didn't have word processors in the 70s. And well, they did, but they were like these huge things in offices. But that I would write something, and I don't even know what I wrote until I was done. I would be sweating and emotionally drained. I would go back and read this incredible story about a man in the 1790s in France who literally is executed on a guillotine. And it was a fantasy story. It was completely.
I have a lot of those too.
Yeah. So without going too much into it, yes, I think there's been a pattern in my life, but I will say that having a near-death experience, and just so people know, I went into VFib, ventricular fibrillation. It's called the Widowmaker. And unless you are literally in a hospital or in an ambulance or someplace where they have a defibrillator, there is no way you're going to survive it. That's why it's called the Widowmaker. Your heart starts to quiver like jello. Is a short circuit, and mine was caused by 100% blockage of my left anterior descending artery, my LAD. And that was from a plaque rupture. So a piece of something broke off like a banana in a straw in a milkshake, went down, 100% blockage. And I had gallbladder issues at the time, undiagnosed. I didn't know that's what they were. There were these colon spasms that were debilitating. I mean, I couldn't breathe for a while. And stupid me, I was scared of doctors. I didn't want to go to doctors. I
would not think that of you.
But now, but then I wouldn't. I was scared of what they would do, and needles. I mean, needles are nothing now. Yeah. God, back then it was a big deal, traumatic for me. So I found that when I had these colon spasms, which were actually undiagnosed gallbladder attacks, after eating some rich foods or, fatty foods or too much alcohol or chocolate. I love chocolate, who doesn't?
Who doesn't love chocolate?
Yeah, right. So I would basically, for anywhere from 45 minutes to 4 hours, I could barely breathe. The pain, no matter where I moved, it would go down my shoulders, my back. I would hold a pillow and just breathe. And people say, Bob, you idiot. Why didn't I said, I just didn't. It would go away. It would suddenly just lift and I would be fine. So in essence, when I was actually, and it simulates a heart attack very closely, but I knew it would lift, it would go away. Well, when I was actually having a heart attack, that's when something was amiss, like it wasn't lifting, and I knew that something was wrong. So that's what happened. I let it go too long, thinking it was something else. And this time it really was serious. And the crazy thing about all of this,
that was a long time of the day, wasn't it? I mean,
3 a.m. I woke up at 2 something with, it starts with just, my stomach is kind of bothering me, but this time it's a little higher up in my chest, and and then my arms were getting heavy, and and there was a lot of pain. But it was, I've been through this before. I knew this pain. It's like, all right, here we go again. But I would get in the shower and let hot water just fall on me because it was soothing, the hot water. And I know this sounds crazy, sorry guys, but if you jiggled your stomach or this area would kind of loosen things up, and I felt like I could deal with the pain. And so this time I'm in the shower and I'm thinking it's indigestion, something, because it's higher. It's not like where it usually is. I'm like, just gas, indigestion, reflux. But I'm in the shower and letting the water on my face, and nothing's coming up. Like I'm not belching anything to be grabbed. And I'm like, this feels, and then my arms were really heavy, which I found out later was a real bad sign. When the paramedics heard that was all the bells and whistles went off. But I got out of the shower. I swear to God, I pulled out my iPhone and I literally Googled heart attack symptoms on my phone, in my bathrobe, standing dripping wet, right in the shower. And I go through this checklist of things.
Heart attack.
Yeah, no, exactly. I mean,
I know it sounds funny. It's not really funny, but it sounds funny.
But hello, welcome. And this is what, 2013. So we had, I don't know which iPhone I had. Was it iPhone 6 then? I don't know. It was an old one, but it worked.
And that's what self-diagnosed.
Self-diagnosis. Yeah, I did WebMD, no. Yeah. So anyway, but I went through this checklist, and it says, if you have any one of these symptoms, call 911 within 5 minutes. And this has been like 40 minutes now. And I'm going through the list. Yep. All of them on the list, but it's things that I had with these these gallbladder attacks. So, but the last one on the list, the last one of like 8 or 9 symptoms was nausea. And believe it or not, I'd never experienced nausea when I had these other attacks. It was the one thing, even though it was like stomach, never felt nauseous. This time I was feeling the nausea and everything else. And I said to myself, if I didn't know any better, I think I'm having a heart attack. And my other half, Craig, was in bed asleep, and I was like, Craig, I think I need to go to the doctor. I'm not feeling too well, and I think I should call 911. And he's like, you sleep. I'll call 911 myself. So I put on I tightened up my bathrobe, and I took my phone and I went down into the living room, and like, I don't know what it was, but again, you talk about spirit guides and where this comes in. This voice was in my head, and I was scared to call, and it said, dial now. That's what I heard, dial now. So I just went, and I hit the button, and they answered the phone. I'm like, don't answer. But they answered. And then I said, I think it's indigestion. I'm not feeling too well. I'm not so sure. And they said, well, we're sending somebody over. Do you want me to stay on the line with you? And I'm like, yeah, do you mind doing that? And they said, no, not at all. They said, do you have any animals in the house? You need to put the animals away. And we had a dog, our sweet Zeus, who's no longer with us now. But Zeus was there. And Craig at this point was getting up. And they showed up at the door like in just a few minutes. They're very close to where we live, thank God. And he was kind of hopping, putting on his shorts and trying to come down the stairs.
Probably like, what the hell are you doing?
Yeah, exactly. Because he could hear me talking now, obviously. And I said, we got to put the dog away. He says, I'll do it later. I said, no, do it now. They're here at the door. So he goes to put the dog away. So I answer the front door and they're like, is it you? And I'm like, yeah, it's me, but it's just like indigestion, but I'm not sure. And because I'm standing there, they said, well, can you walk to the ambulance? You know, normally they come in with stuff, which they've done later, you know, they make you sit down, they lie down, they bring us whatever. They said, no, can you walk to the ambulance? I'm like, I've been walking around for 45 minutes. It's just gas. Why not? Right. I'm so embarrassed. Walking out at night, like we recreated in that parking lot in New England there, that, you know, and the neighbors there, God knows, are they watching and get in the ambulance, icy blue lights. I'd never been in an ambulance before. There was something kind of spaceship alien about it. And I sat down and like, it was like a little bit of an adventure, but at the same time, I'm like, I just want the pain to stop. That's what prompted. I just want the pain to stop now. I'm done with this. And I got into the chair. They started asking me a couple of questions about like my age or my weight or something. And it's like, wait, I know the answer to these questions. I know the answer, but I couldn't think of it, which was a little weird. And then they asked me about, my arms, something about, I was telling them about my arms, and the paramedic, as soon as I mentioned the arms, he said, put 12 leads on him, which was like the extra sensors to get your heart. And he said, literally, one of the guys said, can we open your robe to get to your chest? And I'm like, yeah, whatever you need to do. And the next thing I know, I'm like shooting through outer space. I'm like in this completely different place. I had no recollection from that moment on that I'd been sick, that I was in an ambulance, that I'd been in pain, none of it. I am having this adventure, which I can go into later. I don't know how far you want me to go, but it happened that easily.
Wow.
You know, that quickly. So that was how it all came about in the middle of the night, when I wasn't expecting it. And it was a normal day up to that point. We went out to dinner with friends. I actually thought what had caused it is, and I've written about this, I have a blog that I haven't updated in a while myself, but they have a big bowl of like Halloween candy that's always by the door with chocolates and caramels. I love it. So we had dinner out with friends, and I scooped a few up in my hands like this, and I snuck them in. So in the car on the way home, I was eating them.
You were eating a whole bunch of chocolate.
When I wake up at 2:00 in the morning, I'm like, oh, I shouldn't have had the chocolate.
Shouldn't have had that. Yeah.
You know?
Yeah. Do you know how many people do that?
Yeah.
That just, you know.
And that's it. Because I will tell you,
we don't want to go.
It was instant though. It was instant. I can understand what people, and I've heard people say this, that their last thought in life is, oh shit, you know, or I don't feel so good, or something like, I get it. That is literally the ultimate, because I had no inkling that was what was going to happen. And when they brought me back, I had no idea really that is what had happened, because it was so surreal. I mean, it didn't all register right away. It was just.
Well, it makes me think of, I mean, I haven't had too many experiences medically, but when you're being put under, you know, like when you're actually at that point of where they're talking to you.
Yes.
You know, I mean, silly things. I can't think of. I've had a couple minor things, but I've had to be put out.
Right. Sure.
And, you know, you're laying there, and they're talking to you, and it's like, yep, okay. And then they tell you we're gonna administer, and you're gonna kind of maybe start to feel a little bit, and then you're just gone. You're like, and I remember even asking them one time. Yeah. What was it that I had done? I don't remember the surgery, but I remember kind of like, well, where am I going?
Right.
And the lady laughing at me, because she's like, I'm like, am I going somewhere? Like, am I? You know,
where was I?
And she's like, I don't know, but that's when you're talking. That seems, like you're gone.
That's
it. Just gone.
Exactly. And it's interesting, because you talked in your opening about, you know, walking through that door, getting to look in the door. And it's interesting, because I've said I got to look in the door, but I didn't get to stay. You know, because I have through my life been very curious about it. I've been ever since I wrote that story about the 1700s, and there was a near-death experience there. I mean, well, not near death. I mean, in this character died, was beheaded, but in the story that I wrote, and mind you, this is 1977.
Yeah.
Before Raymond Moody's book, I think, had just come out, but it was not known. I mean, it was something that I'd never heard of. And in the story, I wrote my own fantasy version of what it was like to die. So I wrote my story, which involved falling through darkness and space and you know, the universe, and comfort and music, and a feeling of elation, of love, of joy, completion, all of this stuff in great detail. But it was my version. I mean, and nobody had written about that before. You died, you died. I mean, people were shot in movies or whatever. You know, I had a relative that had died that just, they're plastic bodies in a coffin. I mean, it's gruesome, but there was nothing like that. It was like such a unique story. So these guys, Michael Rapunzel, who was the head of the Renaissance Church then, he was the pastor. He called him Rapunzel because he had long blonde hair. It was Michael. Metallica was his name. It was a crazy place, but it was anti-drug. It was hardworking people, but they did believe in reincarnation. And so I knew about their spirituality, and I knew, so when they came to our house, because they were doing some work with my father, is how I met them, who was an attorney in the music industry. And they had a group called The Choir, and it was this rock choir that would tour around. So they did all sorts of really cool things. Anyway, so I thought, well, these guys might be interested in this story I wrote. So I ran upstairs and I got my typed sheets of paper, and Michael's standing there reading it right in front of me. It was like 7 or 8 pages maybe. And he's going, oh my God, oh my God, oh my, I'm like, what did I write? What'd I do? And then he says, like, I want you to read this book called Life After Life. It's a brand new book by Dr. Raymond Moody. And I'm like, what is it? He says, just get the book.
Life. To write that down.
Life After Life, Dr. Raymond Moody. It was one of the groundbreaking novels, research books at the time. And it started a whole trend. So I get this book, right? And what it is, Dr. Moody had done research where he had 125, I believe is the number, 125 subjects that had suffered a near-death experience. They had died and been resuscitated either through an accident or heart attacks or surgery, whatever. There were a lot of different people from various backgrounds, different religious beliefs, all sorts of variations. So it wasn't just one person who had a belief in one thing. And all of these people, every single one of them, had elements of commonality in what they experienced that have now become the classic, you know, the tunnel of light and the peace and the joy and all of that stuff that is now much more known in common vernacular. But then, and I'm like, okay, so these are real people that this actually happened to, and their stories were very different from anything I'd ever believed or most people had ever talked about. So I'm like, I've never died. How do I, writing this fantasy story about a guy who died, like in the 1790s, how did I write all of this stuff that was so exact, that matched what these people had actually reported through research, medical research, that this had happened? And it blew my mind. I said, there's something going on here. There is definitely.
How old were you? So when you wrote
17 then? 17?
17.
Yeah.
So do you think that you were writing about you?
Yeah. Oh, yeah. To this day, I believe it. I wasn't sure then, because when I wrote it, I wasn't thinking of that as that way, but it was done in the first person. It was so, and Karen, it was so vivid. It was so vivid. And the descriptions of things was not like in the movies. I mean, it wasn't like clean. And I mean, there was blood everywhere. It was disgusting. There was stench. It was like reliving all of this was quite profound. And yes, it was a story, but there was something about it that just heightened reality. It meant more than anything. And I do believe now, after having suffered or survived a real near-death experience, and there's a group I meet with every month. We get together. I lovingly call them my nearly dead people group.
My nearly dead people. I
can say that because I am one, but you know, other people.
Remember what we were going to title the show, "The Medium and the Dead Guy."
The Medium and the Dead Guy, right? Which we should, because you know,
because that's. I mean,
death is too serious to take seriously. I mean, I mean, and when you've lived it, it's like I've earned the badge. I can say that, but I understand people are like, oh, that's horrible. How could you say that? It's like. It is what, but we talk a lot about, and I did a documentary called Back from the Light, which is about the after effects of surviving near. I did it with a wonderful woman named Yvonne Sneeden, who was the producer of that.
Great documentary.
And introduced me to a lot of people who have survived and explain things. For me, it was a quest to understand, which a lot of people go through. and what do I do? And what happened to me? And why do I feel this way? And there are changes in your personality, things that you want, fears, depression. What am I supposed to do with this? All of these questions. But I realize that the after effects are sort of what sometimes define the experience itself, because the experience itself is just a moment in time. It's very brief. You live the rest of whatever your lifespan will be, having been through that with that new knowledge, like plugged into something that you downloaded in ways, and it's constantly revealing itself. But it's the after effects. And I realized years later that what I experienced at 17, even though it wasn't an actual near-death experience physically, it was a writing exercise. Whatever I relived, whatever I plugged into then, I started to experience after effects of that. That's when psychic things started to amp up for me. That's when other kinds of clairvoyance things amped up. My curiosity for that amped up. And it wasn't until I looked back on it and go, yeah, there was a pattern that started after that moment. So there was this weird, you talk about a pattern in life, back to your earlier question, that really does relate. It's so interwoven, all of this.
Well, that totally makes sense.
Yeah.
And it makes me think of how, like, a lot of times when people, I mean, we have just not near-death experience or anything like that, but just in normal life, we have these moments that something happens and it changes. And we tap into something in ourselves, or we're tapping into maybe our guides are coming in to change. Okay, we need to change your course here a little bit, or make you more aware, whatever it may be.
Yeah. Oh, yeah.
And even just encountering people, there are certain times you're having a conversation with someone, and something they say stands out. Like, I needed to hear that.
Yes. Yes, exactly. Exactly.
What's amazing is, of course, back on your writing, like, there's so many different directions we could go with that. I think that's what's crazy about the whole spiritual world, because you could go with, were you, again, downloading a portion of yourself, were you getting a preview version of something coming? Were you tapping into, quote, a past life of something that you've experienced in a different life? I mean, even though some of the characters in the story are different, but were you doing that? Or were you tapping into a person that was working through you that particular time?
Oh, interesting. You're right.
Like, the spirit of a person who did experience that.
Right.
And I mean, it's crazy, so many different places you can go with it.
No, that's fascinating.
There's a preview. And because I know, like, many people will ask me, is your life destined? Like, is everything that happens in your life programmed or pre-recorded? And
I wouldn't think so.
I think certain elements are, like, there's certain paths that you're
supposed to do, things you're supposed to navigate. Yeah.
And then your life, depending on the choices and the decisions that you make, may take you longer to get there. You may get there quicker. You're kind of, I don't totally believe that everything's predestined.
Well, I mean, you talk about things like people who take like an intuition, or you get a sense of, should I do this? And I, particularly since my near-death experience, more so than ever, like, if I get a feeling like, go make sure that you turned off the gas, or did I turn off the coffee maker, or, oh, I think I left my keys there. And a lot of them go, oh no, I won't bother. What I've learned now is that if you get an instinctive feeling like that, listen to it and follow it, because maybe it has nothing to do with the keys, but maybe because I stopped and I went back to get my keys, that delayed me by 15 seconds.
Exactly.
And by 15 seconds, I missed that car accident pileup that was down the road, that I got stuck in traffic behind it. But if I'd been 15 seconds ahead, I would have been in the middle of it. People like that. And I use the example, like on 9/11, this is a very dramatic version of it. Someone's running for an elevator to go up to work in the morning, and somebody just makes it inside, and they're like, oh, thank God.
I know, and you get pissed off. God damn it.
Right. But they died because of that fraction of a second. And the person behind it was running to make the elevator and was pissed off because they didn't make the elevator. They lived because then the plane hit and they were down and they got out and they were lucky. So I'm just saying that's a dramatic version of it. And sometimes if you're destined to be, you bought a ticket on the Titanic, but you didn't know it was the Titanic, right? You bought a ticket on you know what, United, 191 or 81 or whatever the flight, that you it's just that then your fate is sealed that way, but you don't know that. But if you have an instinct, like people say, I'm just not feeling well today. A flight attendant called off work. I'm not feeling well today. I will tell you that Craig, he works with the airlines and he works with US Airways. He's with American Airlines now, but he on 9/11, we went out the day before, 2 days before. It was like the Sunday, actually. He was supposed to go out the next day or later that day. We went out to brunch, and he suddenly got this wave of nausea. Was feeling really bad. And he says, I think I'm going to call off sick. It was just a Sunday, a normal Sunday. And I'm like, are you okay? And he goes like, no, I really haven't. And he called off sick. He never does that, never. And a few hours later, he was feeling better. We had brunch, he ate, feeling better, but then it was too late. He couldn't call back into the trip. So he was off. So he was home on 9/11 when God knows where he would have been or what would happen. Now, thank God.
I don't know if you ever told me that.
Yeah. So a US Airways plane, thank God, was all right. But I mean, people were stranded, as we know. I mean, they did a whole musical, Come From Away. I mean, it's all about people stranded in all over the place and the disaster, the horrors of it all. So sometimes you talk about guides or messages. I do believe that people say, well, you have special abilities or certain people. I said, no, I think, and I've said this, and you and I have talked about it, that I think we all, if we're all part of the same ether, we're part of the same universe, part of the same collective reality, that we're all part of that. But I think that for a lot of people, there's just a lot of noise, the noise of every day, the noise of, I got to work, I got to do this, I got to do that. And we block it out, or we're taught, oh, that's just coincidence. Or just, you're silly. Stop feeling that way. Stop thinking that way. But if we listen to that inner voice, I trust it all the time now. This plug in to this life force, I listen to it, and hopefully it guides me. It takes me away from things I shouldn't, or it takes me to something that I need to do.
And that's something that is very common for everyone, because if you ask anybody, doesn't matter who they are, is it better when you follow your intuition?
Yeah, right.
Every one of them will say, yeah, I should have followed my gut on that. Even the simplest things.
Yeah, and those are the most important.
Most important, completely. I know that some people will be curious, like why, which I would think this might be an after effect with near-death experience. People who feel that there's got to be something special about me, that I came back. And is that pressure? Like, is there pressure to, because you and I've talked about this before, and it's funny because Garrett understands it. Not everybody does. Yeah. My son, Garrett, where you feel there's more depth to you in this life, more soulfully connected living. You're more connected. People might say, well, your soul's more advanced, or maybe it's more experienced. And there are other people who live a very, and I say this not being disrespectful, very, very human life. They get up, they go to work. They're not striving for spirituality. They're not striving to understand depths of themselves or others. They're more, I don't want to say robotic, but just they're more earthbound. They're more earthbound. They're just, I get up, I go to work, I do this. I don't necessarily strive for a lot of different things, and it's that. And then there are other people that feel a sense of purpose, a sense of, I'm here for a particular reason. I would think that would be one of the difficult side effects for people who don't necessarily feel special, but they have this experience and they are special because they've come back. Well, and they're probably thinking, but I don't want to be special. And why the hell did I have this experience? What am I supposed to do with it?
Oh, yeah. It's funny. The word special, the word special does it because it's human. This can happen to any of us. And I don't feel special in that way. Special to me implies that you've got some special gift that's better than other people, or
Right.
you're high, and there are famous nearly dead people, who've written books about it and become very famous, like a New York Times bestseller, or, I'm not going to mention names because there are lots of people out there who've done quite well and become famous off of this. But they're also doing good because they're also inspiring people and teaching people and things as well. So there's a fine line to walk, because there is in the community, there's almost like some people are so obsessed, and I say this with respect, are so obsessed with the near-death experience itself. It's like, how fantastic is your experience? How much of, quote, heaven or whatever you saw did you see? And how profound was it? And there seems to be this sort of almost like a peer review of that sort. And I have trouble with that. I'm very humble, I believe, about it, but it is profound for me. But no, not special. But what it did do is show me that, yes, why did I come back? There is something that I need to do, and there's something that I need to figure out. And as time goes on, because I am a communicator, because I work in the arts, that I have opportunities to share, like you and I are talking right now. Not everybody would necessarily feel comfortable, getting on a live video and talking about very deep and personal things. So I've had to let go a little bit and say, okay, if this will help somebody else. And I'm always happy to talk to people about it, because I know how I felt when it was new, but it was new, but yet I'd spent years of questioning things and some really weird stuff that had happened to me in my life that validated things that made me more curious. So I was like, oh, this is just perfect. I kept asking, like, what is it about? And boy, be careful what you ask for, you might get it. So, I say that jokingly, but there's a very serious side to it that is part of a journey for me. And but yes, it turns you inside out and upside down, because frankly, Karen, we can be spiritual people, and you have a wonderful career of helping people in this mediumship and insight, and helping souls cross, and helping people here and now to deal with things. That is an incredible thing to do. But at the same time, the very fact that I died, that my body, my heart stopped, my breathing stopped. They said that within 30 seconds the brain starts to shut. It was a minute and a half. They said that I was gone, and like I said, like that, like changing a channel. And it made me feel like, well, I don't live in fear. If anything, I'm not afraid at all anymore, which is weird that you're not afraid. It's like, I got things to do. I feel like I have a responsibility, but dying, and it bothers other people because they hear you talk about stuff like that. And it's like, I'm like, no, I don't want to be dead, but there is something really amazingly.
So tell everyone what happened at that moment when you left. What do you recall? And I know that you remember this like it was yesterday.
Well, it never changes, which is crazy. I don't remember what I had for like breakfast, sometimes.
Oh, I know.
And, I mean, I don't want to go into all of it because it actually is exhausting, but I will sort of share some of the key points. I suddenly was like in this hallway, like floating, like just feeling like relaxed. And it was like gray, smooth, like hallway like this. And there was like a light in the distance, like someone had a door open or something. And it was just a comfortable feeling, but I'm just enjoying it. I'm just like, I'm dreaming this. I'm just like having a dream about this. And I start floating towards this light that got brighter and brighter. And then I just found myself literally like in this neon multicolored like tunnel of light swirling around me and just shooting through it like you're on one. It was almost like, being influenced by a ride at Disneyland or something. I was just going to say that
it makes me think of a ride in Disneyland.
Yeah, it's exactly what it was like.
Your lights are all shooting past you.
And I don't know whether this is influenced by seeing movies like that or whether it was real, but that's what I was experiencing. And then suddenly it's like you shoot out the other end. And for me, it was like literally the universe expanding. Like I could see the Milky Way. It was just the stars. It was just like, it was just amazing. And then there are things about this that I don't remember. There are parts of it that I don't. And actually a woman who was a cardiac nurse when I was doing an EKG or something, not long afterwards. It was very fresh for me. She says, and people kept asking me, everybody asks you, like, did you see the light? Did you see the light? Is there a light?
Yeah.
I'm like, yeah, I saw the light, but there's a lot I don't remember. And she said, you know what? I've heard from other people. She told me, she says, you will remember if and when you're ready, which was interesting. I never thought about it. And from a medical person saying that. So there are gaps in it, I will be honest with you, but certain parts are very clear. So I'm now floating in this dark purple sort of area, whatever this place was. It was almost womb-like, and I'm going blank on names of people now that have written books, but there was a near-death researcher who talked about this as being like a womb-like, mother-like place, and it's a safe place, and it was interesting. Anyway, so when I'm in this dark space, there's no stars, it's just like dark purple, comforting. I'm floating up like this, just drifting, and I wasn't aware of a body or not a body. I just felt floating, and I see up ahead of me all of these different sort of like colored entities, like swirling entities of light and smoke and dimension. And as I'm coming up to them, they're kind of coming closer. So as if we were in space, we would be coming together like this. And there was one in the front, and then there were several in the back. And this entity in the front, the only way I could describe it was like swirling light that was like smoke and light and energy, but most vibrant colors, beautiful. But these tendrils would like slowly kind of come out from it. And I've since found these fractal drawings that Kevin Gross, I think, is the artist's name, and he did these fractal drawings, which another near-death survivor said, that sounds like what I saw. I'm like, you're kidding me. And she showed me these pictures that this artist did of fractals, which are, he wasn't drawing artists of spirits or dead bodies or anything. It was like mathematical art that was part of the universe, and everything is a fractal in life. If you think about it, the pattern in swirls and behind the wake of a boat, the pattern in leaves, repeating patterns, like a paisley pattern that repeats and repeats. Look at behind me, the books, there's patterns everywhere. So I was like, wow, that was kind of blew my mind when I thought, so I'm looking at this entity, and it looks like this thing of light, and a tendril, as it comes closer, starts to reach out, like it's going to come around my neck like that. And as it got closer, I knew it was my grandmother, my maternal grandmother, like no question whatsoever. And she had died, 1986, I guess. And her birthday was the day before mine. And, like any relationship, there was contention in some relationships, but there was also, we were very close because of her birthdays and things. And as she started to come close to me, I just knew it was her. And I was feeling this love and I was mesmerized at the beauty of this. But at the same time, I knew it. It was like familiar, but it was like, like this one. As this tendril starts coming around, it starts pouring into me as if we were melding together. And I suddenly felt this power of emotion, this love that was just filling me. And I flashed back. I don't know if you can have a flashback in a near-death experience, but it's the only way I can explain it, in movie terms, that's all I know, is that there was a real time years before where I went to her grave. It's in a cemetery near LaGuardia Airport. I was on a business trip. I rented a car. I went there because I don't go there very often. And I was just missing her. And I remember sitting on the ground. There was little headstones that are low and they have a slope like that. I sat and I leaned against the headstone and I was just rocking. I was just thinking of her. That's all, just missing her. That's like anybody would do.
Yeah.
I suddenly felt her presence like there with me. And the love was so overwhelming. And she was like pouring into me, like this love I felt. It was like, she was like saying, I'm here and I'm with you. And I started sobbing. This is a real life episode. I'm sitting this guy in a cemetery, sitting on a grave, sobbing, leaning against it, feeling the spirit of his dead grandmother filling it. I mean, you write that in a story and see where they take you, But so here I'm feeling this. And I said to her, this entity, never looked like my grandmother. I never once saw someone with a little apron.
Exactly.
I don't think my grandmother ever wore an apron that way, but anyway. But so I said to her, this is the same feeling I had that time when I visited you in the cemetery. And in my head, there was no mouth, there was no voice, but in my head filling me said, the reason I showed you that then is so that you would recognize this feeling now and know that this is real. And I was like, you know, like completely overwhelmed me, the emotion of it all. And we were melding one. It was almost like, oh my God, that something would be set up. Like, I wasn't thinking that then. I was just overwhelmed by the emotion. But in analysis of it, I'm like, wow, how crazy. Then there are all these other entities which I know are other friends of mine and guides or family members or friends that I know were lost. I hope that I had crazy conversations with all of them. I have no memory whatsoever. I just know that they were there.
That's the one that was profound.
I cannot identify who they were, but I just guess in my feeling now, it's like, I know it was this person, this person, this person, this, it had to have been there, but there's no recollection of that. I sort of shifted gears where, like, if I would, there were like stars again. And if I just thought about a star, I was there. I was suddenly in this place. And the first one was really bizarre because I was in this plastic boat. We had a blue plastic boat, and I've described this before, where we had a house in New Jersey growing up. When we moved many years afterwards. My parents moved, I'm sorry, for many years that moved away from there. But there was a swimming pool. We were lucky to have a pool, and the boat would be on the pool in the summertime. But in the winter, if you put it on the snow, it became a sled.
Yeah.
So there's this big backyard with this big hill in the backyard, and I'm sitting in back with this down jacket that I had and a knit cap, and I could feel the air. I could feel the frost and the snow, and my younger brother was sitting in front of me in this boat, and we're whizzing down the hill, and I could feel it all. And at the bottom of this hill, which then of course I remembered afterwards, there was a chain link fence, and we're plowing right towards the fence.
Oh, geez.
And and this really happened, but I hadn't thought about this in years. And I thought, thank God my brother's in front of me. He's going to hit the fence before I do. And he'll cushion my impact. Only this time, Karen, you know, I was like, oh my God, how awful that I did that. I got to call my brother and apologize to him and tell him I'm so sorry for doing that. But it was so real. It was so vivid. And it was like, of all the crazy things, that of all things.
So what actually happened in real life? Did you guys hit the fence?
We hit the fence, and he went into the fence, and I think he hit his head. I mean, you know, we were all right. I mean, it was, you know, he might have gotten scraped up, and he did cushion my impact.
Right.
So I don't think we went down that hill anymore after that, or if I did, but it was like a crazy thing. But I was reliving this, like I could feel it. It was so,
right.
I was there. I was just there.
Yeah.
And then the channel changed again, and this gets a little heavy. You know, my stepfather was a very successful man in his life, but very difficult man, a very contentious relationship. I think in death, his spirit is a much lighter, loving soul. But I think we were assigned to each other in this life to challenge each other in many ways. But I had a difficult upbringing in many ways. And I was 6 or 7. So this was actually younger than I was in the first scene. There was no order to it. And we had a den. We lived in the city in Manhattan at the time. I had an apartment that was on the west side, overlooking the park, Central Park. And I'm walking into this den that we had, and I could see everything as if I was standing there again. And there was like this woven sort of wallpaper on the wall that was sort of like an interwoven, like a fabric kind of a thing. And I remember because we had a cat that would climb up it and hang onto the wall sometimes. It was weird. But there was like a bar that had this old silver tureen, like an ice bucket with the fork was kind of bent hanging there, and the half empty bottles. And there was this table, like a square table that had a marble insert in it. I could see all of it. I hadn't seen this stuff in years, but it was all so vivid. And then there were like radiators that went about halfway up. And then the windows, you could turn a handle and push them out like that. And there was a little bar at the bottom that held the window, and you could release the bar and open the window all the way. We were on the 7th floor apartment. And I climbed up onto the balcony, the radiator like that. And I was gonna kill myself. I wanted to jump out the window. I was
you were little.
I was 6 or 7. I was angry. Something must have happened. I don't remember then what it was, but I like didn't want to be there anymore. I was done. I was done. And I was going to jump out, and I opened up the window and was looking down into the street. And it was interesting because as an adult, I this makes sense. But as a kid, I was thinking to myself, if I jump out, I'm going to get in a lot of trouble.
Yeah.
Which is kind of crazy because, you kill yourself.
You get a hell of a lot more trouble.
A lot more trouble than that. But it was an interesting reaction. And then this is where it got really crazy, and which was very profound for all of it. Like maybe why I went, or maybe this was the message I was supposed to take away. This voice from somewhere, which I don't remember hearing a voice back then. I mean, I obviously got scared or something, and I stepped down and I went back to bed or something, and that was the end of it. But reliving this, there was this voice that said to me, if you're not on this planet, there are people whose lives are going to change or not even happen, because not just me, all of us, we are a catalyst for other things. And just like, to use a simplest term, like a pebble in a pond, a ripple effect, things ripple out and affect other people. Even the most subtle thing, a nice gesture to somebody, a compliment, you don't know how that could change somebody's day. Yeah. And it's true, because I've been a casting director, I've been a director, I've had in my smaller circle, I worked in the West End of London, where I work with different people in the industry, that I've had in some ways an influence on people. And even locally, I cast a musical here and directed it in Maryland once I got to Maryland, where the two leads that I cast opposite each other, they didn't know each other. They were actors. They met because I put them in that situation.
Right.
They then fell in love. They got married. They had kids.
Yeah.
Never would have happened here had it not been for that. My friend Rain Pryor, I met Rain Pryor in Edinburgh, Scotland, the daughter of Richard Pryor, and she'd been going through some tough times, and we met in Scotland. She came to visit me in Baltimore to see me in a play that I did after we got back from Scotland called Awesome 80s Prom. And while she was there, she met a guy that was in the play. They started dating. She was going through a divorce. She ended up moving to Baltimore, right? Ended up marrying this other guy in time, had this gorgeous daughter who is now just turned 13 years old, who is this gorgeous young woman. And people all over know Rain in Baltimore now, all because we met in Scotland and she came to see me in a show and ended up moving here. So I'm saying, like, as a catalyst, I was being shown that you need to be on this planet because there's people's lives and careers that are dependent on you, just like yours is dependent on other people, and just like anybody. That didn't make me special because of those elements. My point is, each one of us does that. So if I wasn't here, I had to be here. So that whatever talked me down then was like, no, you've got a destiny here. And the lesson I came away with after that was, there is a purpose, and I'm here because I'm here to serve other people. I'm here to educate, to guide, to share, and to love. And that was the most important lesson of it all. And after that, I just basically remember, like, I was kind of floating over this lobby, and it was gold, and there was all this golden shapes, and there was figures walking, and I was like flying over it is all I remember. And then I had this overwhelming feeling like I was on nitrous oxide at the dentist. I don't know if you've ever had the laughing gas or nitrous. I always love it when I get to the dentist. But there was like a certain level, like if you get enough nitrous in you, I know, like when you're ready, like they would say, are you ready? And I'm like, I can't explain. It was an out of body separated feeling with like these golden X's is the only way, this humming and this whatever. And I suddenly was feeling that, like as if I'd taken a whole tank of nitrous. And I don't know why, but I said to myself, why do I feel like I'm at the dentist? and this voice from somewhere said, well, we had to shock you. And I'm like, shock me? Who's talking? And why would you shock me? And then the voice said, just relax. We're getting you to the hospital. And I'm like, hospital? What? Wait a second. I wasn't feeling too good. Wait a second. There's only one reason they shock you is if, and I was like, whatever. And I was like gone again. And then I kept coming to and in and out. And then it was like literally in the ambulance with flashes of things. And then I was in this room where there were lights going on and off. I felt like I was in a like an alien spaceship, and they were doing things, experimenting with me. And it was it was disorienting, not as frightening as what I read about these aliens, but I'm like, what are they doing? And this thing's brushing. And then they said, we're going to have to do this. And then Craig was standing next to me. And I said to him, I didn't have my glasses on at the time, but I could, it was white. Everything was white, but I felt like my eyes were open because I could sometimes see, but he's right there. I said, I can hear you, but I can't see you. And I found out later it was oxygen deprivation. And the guy said, we got to get working on him. They did an angioplasty and a stent. They put in a thing in groin. I felt a burning, like I was prepared for like needles and pain. And like, oh, that wasn't so bad, you know? And then and then I suddenly got very lucid. And, you know, the doctor said, this is what we had to do. And they didn't explain all that had happened to me at that point, but basically that I had 100% blockage, and it was, you know, hospital recovery and cardiac rehab and all sorts of things. But the story, what happened to me? What am I supposed to do with this? Oh my God, so profound. Like within weeks, I was looking up, doing research.
Well, I was going to say, when you were in the hospital and you were in recovery, did you remember that experience right away?
Elements of it I did, not all of it. No, not all of it. There were parts. It was like this fractured puzzle. And I will admit that when I was in the hospital, once I was back, I wasn't thinking about it then that way. I mean, it was like, again, you changed the channel. Now this is my reality. I'm here. They said this is what happened to me. I got potassium IV in me that burned like hell in my arm. You know, they're coming in and out. I got some relatives calling me and you know, family dynamics of what's going on and what energy that I had, and, you know, just trying to get me up and out. I mean, I took pictures that I will never show online, but I mean, of me naked, where you could see, you know, all of the stuff on me that they did. And there was a big thing like that big, a cotton thing that was on my groin where they put in I had to lay there with my leg up for like, I don't know, like a day and a half and not move it because they put a plug in me, apparently, that had to heal. So, I mean, I had to deal with the medical side of it. So it's everything. Karen was like, now this is my reality. Now this is my reality. So honestly, I wouldn't say that I didn't remember or think about it immediately. I would just say it wasn't in my frame of reference then. It was, this is here, this is now, this is what my reality is. It was that simple. It wasn't.
It's kind of like when you go through something very stressful or you know, a time period or a day or whatever it is. Sometimes it's like when you sit down and like you're past it and it's calm, then that's when it hits you. Like, okay, what, like, when did you speak about it? Like after?
Oh, I mean, right away. I think I said
right away, like, oh my God, I just died and I just had this amazing visit.
I said something to Craig about, you know, crazy shit, like I just crazy stuff, you know, and it was just, I couldn't fathom that I died. I mean, that was the hardest part to wrap my brain around. In spite of the experience, it was like, I was dead though. I was dead. I wasn't here. You know, yet I had consciousness. That part was like puzzling to me. That's all I could say. And then it's like, how do you wrap your brain around the fact that the thing that everyone is motivated, every religion in the world, it's all about what happens when we die. Everything. People are motivated by greed, the anger, politics, everything is about what do we have and what happens if we die. And I want to fight for this, so you can't have that and you can't have this. And you'd be all about what happens when we're dead. And I did it. It was like, it happened. And I'm like, oh, I can't fathom this. I can't deal with this. It wasn't until in time when I started to look up research about near-death experiences. And then I found the International Association of Near-Death Studies, IANS. And it was crazy, because then it was like, I wanted to go. I heard they had conferences. The one was in Phoenix the year before. I live in Maryland, as I said. Washington, D.C. is near us. And I called them up and I said, by the way, are you having a convention soon or whatever? I couldn't find anything online. The woman says, yeah, actually it's this week. I'm like, you're kidding me.
You're kidding me. Yeah.
This week. I said, well, where is it? Because I could fly on American Airlines. I could get passes as a spouse of an employee. Yeah. So I thought, well, where is it? Maybe I could fly there. She says, oh, it's in Alexandria, Virginia, which is a suburb of Washington, D.C. I could drive there in 40 minutes. I'm like, okay, guys, come on. Like, this is too crazy. And when I went there, it was fairly expensive, so I could only afford like 1 or 2 workshops or something. So the one workshop that attracted my attention for some reason was about After Effects. I go in, and that's when I meet Yvonne Sneeden and Sabine Vandemeel, who was a dear friend of hers from Holland, who's also in the movie, in our documentary. And they were conducting the workshop. That's how I met Yvonne. And we talked afterwards. And I said, I'm like such a newbie. This has only been like 4 or 5 weeks since what happened to me. And I'm still trying to process it. And I was blown away by the things people are saying, like, yes, oh my God, yes, I get that. Oh my God, yeah. Oh, wow, this is weird. You know, I mean, that's what I'm feeling. And we started to talk. And I don't remember whether it was that time later or it might have been that time. I said I was a filmmaker, and we started to joke about maybe we could make a documentary or something about this, because it was like, so the whole thing again, immediately from the fire into the frying pan, like you talk about purpose, like what am I purpose? Right. It's like, now you got to make a documentary about this. You got to do this and share it and teach other people and show other people to open up doors for them. So a messenger, a guide in training, maybe somebody who's working to do more. I feel that that's the most important mission in my life. And also through my work, like with the film festival and things, to be able to share stories that inspire people, that open people's mind, to influence, give young filmmakers a chance to have their work seen. That fulfills me more than anything, Karen. Talking with you and doing this, that seems to be a greater purpose by what has happened. And I'm actually, me personally, I'm very humbled by it. I'm enthralled by it. I'm invigorated because I feel this is what I'm truly meant to be doing in somehow, some way. But we all have to make a living and things. But I want to pull it all together. So like you're devoting your life's work to not just making a buck, which we all need to do to stay alive on this planet, but to do something that gives back, that helps people. And I think it's a very, very important mission that we have, whether we've died yet or not. Right?
True.
I probably talked too much. I'm sorry. I hope I haven't bored everybody.
No. There's so many pieces. Actually, I've been kind of like on and off emotional, because it's like, when
we'll have to do this again, you know, because I don't think we're going to get it all done in one section. I'm happy to talk again another time, you know, as well.
When you described the amount of love and the entities kind of coming around in that whole visual experience.
Yeah.
And I remember when you and I sat down, when you flew out and we were talking. And for me, it was like, yes, I've seen that. And it's hard to describe, you know, certain things to people who obviously have not seen, you know, they haven't experienced what you experienced. And they can try to understand, they can try to visualize it themselves, but they haven't experienced it.
Right.
And I remember, and many times in doing readings, doing galleries. Yes, some people come in and they're very clear, and I can describe them. They'll come in, you know, presenting in their human form, you know, the life that they live, the way that somebody would remember them.
Right.
They may change their age or come in, you know, a younger version.
Make us younger.
I really feel like I look good, so that's what you're going to see from me.
Right.
But there are many times that spirit comes in a very, like, the voice is there and the love is intense, but they come in these swirling kind of colors.
Interesting.
Swirling colors, and I can hear the voice and I can see them, and I'll know who that person is, or my client will then know
who that is.
They don't need the description. Well, she had blue eyes, she had brown hair, whatever.
No, it's an emotional
amount of emotional love. And I think that's one of the reasons why a lot of my original times of doing readings, I didn't want to do them in person because I get very emotional. It's like it's coming through me, and I start to feel this intense love.
Wow.
And
It's
when I work
amazing.
with couple, I mean, I won't go into it because it'll be a long story, but just some of the spirits that this one particular man who, I mean, I was called to an apartment building, a newer complex. It wasn't even like a lot of people think that, well, it has to be an old historical location to be haunted.
Right,
This
right.
is a modern apartment, young girl and her daughter,
Yeah.
and reached out, your typical paranormal stuff. When I went there, the spirit man, first of all, he violently held his girlfriend and her children hostage in this apartment. And there was a police standoff, and he finally released the girl and the children, and he ended up shooting himself.
God.
And he was in such anguish and pain in spirit, still reliving that. Mm-hmm. When I sat with him, it's almost like a spirit therapist.
Right.
I really feel that way at times. It's like, okay, but in helping him leave and forgive himself and go through and letting go of all that, I mean, he brought me into the visions of his childhood.
Wow.
He was very much abused. He brought me into the vision of his childhood and all these different things in his life that kind of made me a little bit understand, okay, now I know why you are the person that you are.
Right.
You still didn't have to do those things. You could have made different choices, but now I can understand, what's in your heart, what's happening to you.
Right.
And I asked him, I kind of gave like my version of the other side, and to not fear moving on. And I asked him if there was somebody in his life that he loved. And he had said his grandfather. So we worked on, okay, I want you to try to call in your grandfather. When he crossed over, and again, this is one of those things for people watching. It's nothing that I learned how to do. None of this is anything I learned how to do. It kind of happened.
Instinct.
And it's almost like, things work through me that I have no knowledge of how I have the ability to do it. The grandfather comes, and just like what you described, it was like the room got really bright, and there were all of these kind of colors, and I felt him, and I'm bawling my eyes out. I'm sitting in this lady's apartment, and I'm crying, and I'm feeling all of this, and he just went and was gone. And so when I met you, no one, honest to God, nobody that I ever talked to described that kind of vision or experience.
Interesting.
Than you. So when I met you, I thought, oh my God, really? So I'm not dead, but I'm seeing a glimpse of what you physically experienced.
Yeah, but also, Karen, you are a living creature.
Even like right now, it makes me all kind of like.
Oh no, I'm very emotional right now.
Yeah,
I'm feeling that energy.
Like I get to the door with somebody, or.
But you've been there. But you have been there. That's the point. You have been there. It's just you've been there, and your world and your mindset and your direction and your training and your heart and your soul is focused on that. So it's becoming more relevant and pertinent in your life because of what you do and how you do it. But you've been there. I mean, I've been there. You've been there. We've all been there. But again, there's some people. It's like, if this is something we need to do in our own way to help others or to help ourselves or to follow through on a mission, then that's our focus. But it's like somebody who's, they're never meant to do that. They're meant to just go and do X, Y, Z in their life. Then that's their focus. It doesn't matter this stuff because it's going to happen anyway. My stepfather, who was as grounded as they could be in would almost make fun of it, not believe any of this stuff at all. And there are a lot of people who don't. They're skeptics. And I understand why. But if it hadn't happened to me, I would be a skeptic. I mean, it's that kind of a thing. But because it's happened to me, not just once, but near death once, maybe twice, if you take the story into consideration. But a lot of the mediumship type things and the
Right.
psychic things. I mean, once is like, okay, that's kind of cool. Twice is like, oh, wow. 3 times is like, all right, there's something going on here. And if it keeps happening, so we're more used to it. But there are other people, it's just not part of their vernacular. It's not important in their journey to do that. So everybody's got their purpose, their worker bees and their other bees. I mean, that's, in a way, it's sort of like that. So if we have an ability, I was going to use the word gift, but if it's not a gift, if it's an ability to have a perception because we're supposed to do something with it, then we have to recognize and do it.
That's a great way to say that, ability, because a lot of times people, and it's funny because you and I've talked about this before, and I've talked with many people of how it can be very difficult for people who have a spiritualness about them or have a depth to them, that in some ways, like I always describe, you're living, there's a part of you that does live up here.
Yeah.
And there's a part of you that's human and earthbound. And it can be difficult to live
in both worlds,
in between both worlds. And also that feeling of, when I'll say this, when you're living and you're, you got to do your chores, you're living a physical life.
Yeah.
And there's a little bit of a burden feeling of like, oh my God, okay, so I've got to do this, but I also have this higher purpose that didn't necessarily choose, but it's like it chose you, and you have these abilities, and you need to do something with them. You need to, but you also have to live a human life and be happy and enjoy physically living in this world as well.
And appreciating it. I mean, that's
appreciating it.
Yeah, because I do feel that as a near-death survivor, from my experience, that feeling of discomfort with being here, it's like the trivial things that people seem to get upset about and people worry about and all that kind of stuff. When you see it, either it's on television or it's a commercial about something where someone's so upset that something spilled on their rug, I'm like, really?
Yeah. It's like, think about this, Robert. You were six years old, and you were ready to jump out a window. Okay. Yeah. So when you think about that, if anything, that's an incredible part of your existence, because that might have been a moment in your time, but that's pretty heavy.
Yeah. Yeah.
When you think about it, that's pretty heavy. And for many, that whole section of what you've been talking about is healing for so many other people, because there are other people that are 6 years old, or maybe 12 years old, maybe 50 years old,
whatever
that are in those places, but they don't see the other version of themselves. They can't fast forward and see that this is only a moment in my time, and I've got to get through this, because who knows what I'll be moving forward.
Yeah. And a responsibility. I feel a responsibility basically to others. It's almost like, since my near-death experience, my life to me doesn't matter as much anymore. Living and appreciating does, but my life to me, but if I were to die like right now, I'd be totally cool with that. Totally. But there are others that I have a responsibility for, that I need to be here for. And there are things that need to happen still. And I've always said that I can accept the fact that when my work is done, I get to go home.
Right.
I don't mean home in a religious way. I just, because I know that somebody uses the word, but it's like when my work is done, I get to take a vacation. I get to go back there. I get to do that. But it's okay, because I still have a lot. I believe I have a lot to do. And you're not going to go before it's your time. Whenever your time is, whether you're 12 or you're 40 or you're 90, you're not going to go before you're done, no matter what. I believe that, destiny. I believe even accidents or horrible illnesses. I believe that when you're done working, things happen in a certain way, and you're not going to be able to prolong it, or you're not going to be able to, it's just, I believe that. And that's my belief. I can't say, and we always talk in the IANS group, we use I statements, because we're not going to say, you're going to do this, you're going to do that. It's a very personal thing. And even people in our group, some people have had very profound religious experiences in their near death, where they see iconic religious figures that are based on what their faith was, during their life, that it does have an influence. And people say, well, if it's all the same thing, Bob, why would people see one thing, like someone see Jesus or someone see Buddha or someone, and not? I said, in my philosophy of it, it's that we have to come back from that. We don't go all the way. I didn't cross over all the way. Now, maybe it'll all be clear when I get to the other side for real, whatever that is. There are books about what is it like in between. People have written books, Destiny of Souls, things like that, about, through hypnosis, what is it like in between lives, things. But that's speculation, and it's books. No one really knows that. But those of us that come back, we have to be able to put it into terms that we can explain to other people. And if you see a being of light that is bright and wise and filled with love, I mean, one person's description of Jesus was very similar to my description of my grandmother, Right. That doesn't mean that is or isn't Jesus. It doesn't mean that is or isn't my grandmother, but my interpretation, their interpretation coming back, they must have been in heaven, because this glorious feeling could only be heaven. I wouldn't necessarily use that word, but to say heaven as meaning there, not here, wherever there is, I don't know. Is it that we're in another part of the universe, in space, or is it merely a fabric? Is this all a fabrication? Because once we're gone, I only know is that the process of going there, it's going to be pleasant. It's going to be, I mean, not the pain of dying. That part is not, but I'm saying once you cross that, there is a moment of it's okay. So maybe this is all a big joke and it's all just a brain functioning doing this. I won't know the difference afterwards, but I know it'll be all right. The part that bothers me.
It's pretty cool.
Well, but that's the conundrum of dealing with it, because I sometimes think to myself, there's never a moment when we're not thinking something. There's never a moment, even when we're asleep and we're dreaming, right? There's never a moment that there's not something. So I think to myself, well, what would it be like if there were nothingness? Like if it was nothing? I said, I can't imagine that, because there's always some function. I figure, and then I have this crazy fear. I know this is crazy, but maybe other people thought it's like, what if the moment we die, we're reborn? Our perception of it, right? Like the second we die, there's always going to be awareness of some consciousness of some sort. So am I coming out and it's like you're born again into another body? I'm like, oh God, I don't want to come back to this planet anytime soon. Once I'm done with this trip, I'm like, no, I need a break. I want to float in heaven, wherever that is. I want to walk in those fields again, those flowers. I want to feel the sunshine. I want to be able to be a ghost and pop around the world and look at things and visit people and guide people and be able to do that. Like that's a job and a place. Like I will have a reality, a perception, but I don't want it to be another life yet. I'm done. Yeah. I'm done with that when it's my turn for a while. I need a break from this planet. This is the hardest, most difficult, crazy place to navigate. There's so much hatred. There's so much fear. There's so much manipulation. And you know what? I've said this, no matter what someone's political leanings are, whatever their fears are, their hatred, their prejudices, all of this stuff, it's all based on love or lack of love or fear of not having love. Because think about it. Somebody who is hateful about somebody else, whatever it is, whatever side of the coin you're on, okay? That hatred and fear is because somebody's going to prevent me from having something that I need in my life. It's going to prevent me from having the job I want. Or it's going to prevent me from having the lifestyle. Someone's going to take over my life and not allow me to do this, or, whatever that is. And it really is about love, because that feeling of safety is love, that feeling of accomplishment, the calm that you feel when you go to sleep and you're nestled up, it is love. And if you feel that somebody for some reason is going to take that from you, that stirs up, wars that go across eons. So when that kind of blows my mind when I go there, because it's almost like if everybody could have a near-death experience and tap into something just once, I think we'd be a much better place and a much better planet if people could let go and not be so frightened. But we have people that like to stir that up, and we have people who use it because they've got their own ego, their own power, wherever you are in the world. And I'm not targeting anyone, but that is fear, and people use it because of their own gain. And I'm like, it's not about me. There's nothing I want to gain in that. I want to be able to help somebody. That's my feeling about it.
It's amazing. It's amazing. We could talk for hours. So many things.
I think we have. How long have we gone? This is an hour and a half show, probably.
I do want you to share. You started talking about it earlier.
What's that?
And I know that it's profound. About the airplane.
Oh, one of the first psychic. Okay, and then maybe that
because it kind of leads into how almost like a prelude to your life's course a little bit.
Yeah.
Going back, kind of just bringing people back into an experience that you had with aviation. And isn't that funny how aviation, I mean, even now you married somebody who is involved.
Oh, it's always been.
But that has been a part of
transportation, ships, ocean liners, airplanes, always been a deep love of mine, a deep connection to it in many ways, both personally and otherwise. Well, all right, basically, this was like the first moment when something really weird had happened to me that was so powerful and impactful that it shifted gears for me. And it happened after, I'm pretty sure it was after this story had been written. I'd have to go back and look timeline wise. Maybe it was around the same time. A lot of it was happening at the same time. It was 77 or 78. I have to go look up the date, but it was somewhere in there as well. And they were having on television a salute to Israel. And it was famous because Barbara Streisand was on at the very end. She did like this teleconference with Golda Meir. She was on. It was this whole celebration thing that was on for an hour. It was like 10 to 11 or 2-hour thing. And I started watching it with my mom sitting on her bed. And I was in her bedroom in a chair in the corner of the room. And we're watching TV. And about, I don't know, maybe 45 minutes before the hour, like 10:45 or something like that, 10:30, somewhere in there, I suddenly was just daydreaming. I blanked out of the room. The show was kind of boring, I guess, and I blanked out of the room. And I suddenly found myself floating about 10, 20 feet above water at night. It was nighttime, and in the distance I could see like a shoreline way far away, but you know, you see little lights like of a dock or a boat, but way far away, like lights of a city, but so out in the water. And I'm like again, switching channels. It's just my reality. I'm just here, I'm living this, whatever it is. And I hear the sound from above and behind me of like a jetliner, like ooh, coming in right over my head. And I look up and it goes right over my head, right in front of me. And I knew it was a 727 because I know airplanes, and it had a very distinctive T-tail with the engines in the back and the wings went out like that. And I know airplanes, so I knew what kind of a plane it was. And it goes into the water in front of me. And as it hit the water, it was like a wave from under the wings, came up like this, the whole thing. And I was like watching and then it just stopped. It was just bobbing there like that. And I was like, oh, it blew my mind. It was so real, so powerful, this thing. And it just was bobbing in the water like that. And I snapped out of this thing, and I looked at my mother, who was looking at me kind of funny. I don't know whether I'd made a noise or a sound. And I said, "You're not going to believe this." I said, I just saw a plane crash, like right in front of me. And my mother's like, "Well, you have a very vivid imagination." Yeah, that was the line I would get. I love my mother dearly, and if she watches this, Mom, I'm sorry, but it was like, you know, okay. And I'm like, it bothered me. I mean,
our mothers didn't know what to do with us.
Right? Sure. You probably, Karen, stop talking to your imaginary friends. Mama, they're not imaginary. It's Mr. Finchley, who died in 1923. We have long conversations. We play chess together. God.
Shut up.
But we can laugh about it because it's real. That's it. There's no question. It's real. I mean, like I said, if I hadn't experienced it myself, I know other people would think we're nuts, but it really, if you've lived it, it's like there's no other explanation. Yeah. So anyway, so the news comes on at 11 o'clock at the end of the program. And of course, there is nothing about a plane crash on the news. Right. I mean, that would be insane, right?
Right.
So we're watching, the news comes on about, I don't know, 10, 15 minutes into the news broadcast, this report just in, and I'm like, what? It said a national airlines 727 has crashed in Pensacola Bay. We will have more reports on survivors later. And I'm watching this and I burst into tears. I'm sobbing. I mean, it's like someone gut punched me. My mother looks at me like I'd grown a second head.
Yeah.
Like this. And I had to run into my room and just sob it out. I could not believe it. And what had happened was a National Airlines plane had come in. I don't remember what exactly. You can look at it. I actually then pulled up the NTSB reports about it and found that it was all there. It was not my imagination. I mean, I knew it wasn't my imagination then.
Right.
But even decades later, when I said, I want to look this up, exactly the same thing. And I looked up the date and I looked up but the date was off by one day. I remember thinking that, like, that's really weird. The NTSB report about the plane crash is one day later than the actual thing was recorded. The salute to Israel. I said, something's wrong here. It was telecast the next day. They recorded it in Israel or wherever it was on this, or in LA on this day. It was broadcast the next day. It was in May. It was definitely in May. That's coming back to me. So you can all look it up. National Airlines, Pensacola Bay. And they said at the time there were no report of survivors or anything like that. The plane had ditched. It went right into the water. It like flew into the water exactly the way I had seen it. And again, if it hadn't happened to me directly, I wouldn't have believed it myself. But I lived it, and it blew my freaking mind. How is this possible? How does this happen? And there were many other instances afterwards where I would see something and say something about something just in passing, and then something like that would actually happen. You know, two instances. So I, not long afterwards, I went to Europe on a trip. I went to Amsterdam and I was hanging out with these kids and stuff. There was a lot of stuff that got quite involved there. I won't go into now. We'll save it for another show. But there was this window, a KLM DC-10 was like this, like nose down in the window, like sideways like that. And I'd flown over on a DC-10 as well, Icelandic Airlines. I went through Luxembourg. And I remember crazy, this guy sitting next to me probably thought I was nuts. I could see the engine of the DC-10 like right out here like this. And I said, it's amazing how far out that engine sticks. I said, it's amazing those things stay on the wing. I made that comment to the guy in the plane. And he's like, okay, thank you. Okay. I think I'll move my seat right now, you know. And then later on, so then there's this window of the KLM DC-10 nose down like this. And I thought, well, that's a crazy way to advertise an airline, you know, like that. So I then flew to England after that. I was there with friends and I was supposed to fly back to from England to Luxembourg. No, England to Reykjavik to pick up a plane of the flight back on Icelandic. So instead of going back to Luxembourg, I take something to Reykjavik from London. And I looked it up and the DC-10s had been grounded because while I was gone, the American Airlines DC-10 in Chicago had crashed. And what had happened is it lifted up, the engine broke off the wing, flew over the back, the plane went sideways like this. The famous news picture on the time I was down like that. This is when I was in Europe. And I thought, how am I going to get home now? I don't want to fly on the DC-10, you know, but this happened after I saw those things and I made those comments. Now you might go, well, Bob, that's just stupid. So the plane happened to crash and you happen to make a comment about the engine and you happen to notice the plane in the window in a street that happened to be in the same position as the actual photograph of the plane that someone had captured with a camera. And I'm like, no, there was something there that was telling me something was going to happen. And there were other I mean, I could go through a shopping list of things that just, it freaked me out when I would think these things, I would see these things, I would dream of it, and then they would actually happen. Yeah. So there was something going on and I never thought to do it professionally. I never, you know, had training. And if anything, it scared me, it frightened me. And at a point I couldn't do anything about it. I wasn't able to save people's lives. So I kind of said to the universe, stop, please. And it did for a long period of time. I wasn't having any kind of visions or episodes.
There are a lot of people like that. And that's one of those, because there are many people that will ask me about different types of abilities.
Right.
And I know people who they have that happen and that is their ability.
Right.
and they don't know what to do with it. So I mean, that could be for a whole nother show, because I don't have that particular ability.
Right.
Same with the fact of people who astral project. They leave their body, and they do that on a regular basis to go.
Yeah.
It almost seems like you've had a whole plethora of different types of abilities that have come in and out throughout your whole entire life.
It's been weird. There's been a connection with things, which is part of my curiosity. I'd say that since my near-death experience, my minor mediumship, I always feel shy around you because you are a professional at doing this, that I have had more communication from the other side with people that have then wanted to get messages to somebody that would come up in the weirdest random way, but very bizarre. Like we've talked about this personally, but for people watching, where there'd be a symbol or something. I feel I have to talk to somebody or start up a conversation. And then it turns out that something happened, or they happen to say, I don't remember why, but that somebody had died recently, or there's something, and then something would pop into my head, like an image of something. And it's like the most ridiculous thing. And I feel like I shouldn't say anything, but something said, say something, say something. And when I would, this crazy symbol or whatever that meant nothing to me, oh my God, the reaction from this person was like, oh, why did you say that? Kind of a thing. And I just felt like I'm making it up, basically, is what I feel like, but I'm scared to do it. And I'm scared to open up too much, because that's not my thing. It's just, but there's definitely like, I don't live on this planet anymore completely. Honestly, I'm somewhere in between. It's the way I feel. Ever since my near-death experience, I have never felt like I am fully here again, which is sometimes disconcerting. Sometimes people worry about me a little bit, but I'm like, that's okay. I mean, I know I'm here. I'm grounded. It's like the intellectual part of me gets it, but spiritually, emotionally, it's like I'm part of the trees and the leaves and the light and the sun and like springtime now. I've said this before, when the buds are on the trees, I've put my hands out, I can feel the energy. And I'm like, and I've said to Craig, I said, Craig, come here, put your hand, feel this. I can feel the heat, the warmth. And he's like, okay.
Well, you're more connected. When you describe that, that's how I totally feel. And I'm sure there's a lot of people who've had experiences that this might be very helpful for them to hear all these things, because
they're on the right track.
Exactly. But it might be a totally new experience where they may have never, ever, they might have been very earthbound and never really thought about anything beyond, and have this death happen to them. And then now they have all these abilities that they never had before, and don't even know what to do with them. So
it's part of it.
We'll get to that, but that's part of it.
Oh yeah, big part of it. The after effects and how we've changed.
Education, when you think about when you become more educated in certain things, it opens up your mind. It opens up your experiences.
Right.
And I think that it would be the same way.
Yeah. I'd love to talk more about it, and we could cover other areas. I mean, if people are interested, I'd be happy to. Before we
go, too, you have to.
Great. This is so much fun talking to you.
I know. There's like so many things. I don't think I got to any of my questions.
That's the next show.
We did. Because there's so many things I want to talk to you about.
Okay, we'll do it.
Your passion right now.
Say that again?
I mean, since I've met you, I think of how creative. So I'm trying to remember when we first met. You were still doing some different acting things, and you were being pulled in many different places. And I remember you being very frustrated because you had a lot of projects that you were kind of working on, but weren't quite the thing. And it sounds like what you're doing right now is the thing.
Yeah, I guess. I mean, I'm working on some stuff from my past that, there's a screenplay I've been working on for a musical that I think has tremendous potential in the real world. I can't talk about it too much because I'm trying to pull elements of it together, but it's also like, if I'm here, I'm here, I got to do it. I mean, if you don't try, you never know. And again, you look back at your life and you look at the people you've met, the people you've worked with, people who become friends, the way that we all interact with one another. And it sort of is also an inspiration to say, you can accomplish things that are important. If it's meant to be, it will happen. but don't give up. I mean, with COVID, I will say, maybe like a lot of people, I didn't know that I was going to make it through this. I really didn't, because of I had the heart thing, and I didn't know that if I were to get sick, with somebody who's out in the world interacting with the public all the time, even though I've been sequestered and working from home for the festival. I mean, there's plenty that we've been doing, during the time, but we've not been physically interacting. That I thought, this is it. I'm gonna get this, and I'm gonna die of this, and that'll be it.
Right.
And then suddenly I thought, I may actually make it through this. I've had my first shot. I get my second shot just another week, I believe. And so, I mean, knock wood, I'm still here. And I know people, we were talking about it yesterday when we had a little chat, but, we lost a board member for the festival, a wonderful woman that we really care deeply about. And so it's not a joke, any of it. So, but it's like, no, there are things that we got to keep going forward. Pursue your dream. Your dream is something that maybe you're destined to do something that way. And just because it might seem difficult or crazy, enjoy the journey, enjoy the process. And that's what
even the downs, even the ups and the downs, the whole ride. Yeah. Because that's part of me. There's one thing that we will always know, is that everything changes.
Yes.
Every moment there's change.
Yeah.
I love that. Enjoy the journey.
Enjoy the journey, and just keep moving forward like that, and see what takes you.
Well, we have so much future stuff to talk about, so we'll have to we'll definitely do this again.
Okay.
And you have to show your clip of the film.
Oh, that'll be a nice way to go. All right, so the last thing, we'll send people away with a clip of the Columbia Film Festival.
Yeah, and you know what's amazing about this?
What's that?
I was thinking when you were talking about it, how this opportunity for you reaches, so think about your life in general, reaches thousands of people. I mean, the work that you're doing is broadcasting out to millions of people. I shouldn't say thousands, probably millions of people, or has the potential to.
Potential. I wouldn't say that our audience is that huge yet. We would love it if it were, but we're more a local base. But now that we're online, I mean, more people from elsewhere. Yeah. Some things are geo-limited, but because of restrictions. So like if you're not in the Washington, D.C. area, there are a couple of events or films you may not be able to watch. That's a restriction, as if we were live in a theater. But most of the films in our festival, if you're watching this from your area, from up in New England, you could log into the film festival and watch it and enjoy it right online. They got some great films about a lot of cool stuff. Should I play a little trailer?
Yeah.
Okay, this is just a little teaser, guys. That's great. Columbia Film Festival, and it really, it's a very diverse selection of films, and really have a tremendous focus on humanity and inclusion, on health and well-being, on the environment. There's a lot of music and dance you could see that's part of it, and we have some special workshops, and it's really an exciting program. And we're looking forward to when we can go live again for real. We're gonna have some stuff peppered in between, but it's fun, and hopefully we're reaching people with some of the messages. So thank you for.
Well, thank you for being on and joining me and doing this with me. It's always a pleasure.
Love you, Karen Tatro.
So
thank you.
Schedule another time, and
okay.
In the meantime, enjoy being you.
I hope people will subscribe and that they will also follow. And we love your comments. Even if this is pre-recorded, we will look at comments and we'll respond. So we'd love to know what you think. And if you have any questions on any of this subject, right, Karen, that people can ask, and we'll incorporate that in the future. And then we will go live. Eventually we will get brave enough to do this live, right?
Well, there's so many things to talk about. And like even just reaching out to people who, all the different aspects of near death, the surviving it, sharing stories of just people who survived, what their experience was, the different after effects that people have, how they deal with it, what after effects occur. And I know that there are a lot of people that are struggling with it. I mean, I come across, and you've come across many people that are having a difficult time living their life after. With anything, something profound happens to you, it does shift your world, and it does make, you know, your loved ones around you, your friends, your circle of people changes. And I always kind of say this, in, you know, and not to go on talking about a whole another thing, but I oftentimes view our life as like we're the like our life is a boat, and we're the ferrymen of our own journey. And we're on this boat, and we have this destination that we go. We've got some people on that are with us, and we stop at this destination, and some people get off, and new people come on, and then we head out to another port, and we continue going. Meanwhile, there are some people that are with us the entire time on our journey. And then there are people that, you know, we wave goodbye, you know, and you've been a part of my life, or you've been a part of my journey, and that's okay. We weren't supposed to hold on. You weren't supposed to hold on to me, and I wasn't supposed to hold on to you. So we pass, and we continue moving on. So when you say that about it being a journey, I do feel that way. So hopefully, in what we talk about, all of the people who not only have had near-death experiences, but family members, the people who know somebody, their spouse, their friend, their child.
It's important that they understand and have someone to reach out to.
Exactly. So I look forward to our future together.
Me too.
All right. Well, now to live back in the real world and go go about your day.
All right. Well, thank you again, and I'll talk to you shortly, Karen.
Talk to you shortly. Bye.
Bye.
Bye, everyone.
Okay, cool. And I can stop it there.
Okay.
I actually, it's